Oh, we actually built an hour today where we hope your soul will be deeply stirred. I know my soul is deeply stirred whenever I talk to Neha Misra, one of my dear friends, an artist, a poet, a climate justice activist. And we wanted to kind of just have a conversation about how creativity and leadership come together. So welcome, Neha. We're so pleased to have you here. Do you want to say hello a little bit?
Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, late night, whichever part of the planet or the universe you are in. It is so wonderful being with all of you. As Joanne mentioned, Oprah Super Soul, which I love. And, as Oprah says, presence is, one of the best gifts we can share both with ourselves and with other human beings. And I'm just so delighted with the ripples of connection, both through Jen, who is such a dear friend and co-creator and co-gardener in the world in so many ways, and Joanne, with our connection and the seed we have just started watering, and all of you. So just thank you for being here to share your presence, your time, and to listen and connect in whatever shapes and form resonate now and into the future. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I want to share a few aims for the session, particularly for those who are new to the space. This is a monthly gathering, and you're welcome every month, the second Wednesday. Our aim is to build a community, basically, where we all feel supported in ushering in the narrative changes that are necessary. When I talk about narrative change, I really mean the old trope of the international development, the INGO, the big UN narrative is here's some poor people, and then we put some resources in, and then they're not poor anymore. That's not working, if you haven't noticed. It's a lie, if you haven't noticed. And so, what are the new narratives we need to build about how change happens, how communities come together, how transformation occurs at a systemic level? Those are absolutely the new narratives we need to build. And so we need a lot of creativity, and we need a lot of energy, and we need to not feel so isolated and alone. And that's why we gather every month. We're exploring how creativity can be a source of individual and collective healing today in our conversation with Neha, and how imagination can really shape our leadership in the sector. That stirs my soul in big ways. So I'm really happy to welcome Neha. And then of course we're going to harvest and share and all these wisdoms and insights and ideas that we might have with a Q&A at the end. We are shifting from charity to solidarity, and nobody has all the answers for that. We have to actually create the capacity for us to work together on that, and that's why we created this space. So we're very welcome you're here. I do want to just share a few invitations for our group today, this morning, this afternoon, this evening, depending on where you are. And that is that we're here to learn and not critique. I think so much of our professional lives is preparing us to pick apart the problem, analyze the problem, create a solution for the problem. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to explore and be present with each other. We will say that this is a brave space and not always necessarily a safe space. We do need all of us to be pushed to the edges of our comfort zones at times. And we should be willing to do that. That's where change occurs. That's the edge where it's interesting. We do try to work by consent. So everything that is happening here is opt in or opt out. We want to make that really clear, and it's why we explained the recording, where it will go, and we hope to use those practices throughout. We think that is a huge part of collective work and liberation. We try to use I rather than we. We're such a rhetorical group of do-gooders. We're shaving the world, right? Well, no. It's not okay to generalize or assume that there is similarity when there is difference. And so we're trying to really acknowledge those differences in race and class and gender and everything. And then we want you to dare to be unprepared. Particularly communicators, we have to be perfect and refined and all the time. But let's just be authentic. Let's just show up as we are, because it's all welcome here. We want to create spaces where it all can arrive and it all can emerge. So here we go. I'm going to hand over to Joanne now to introduce our special guest. We'll have a conversation and we'll open it up to all of you as well. And we'll get to hear some poems from the poet, which I'm really excited about. So welcome, Neha, and thank you, Joanne.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, I'm so excited about the poetry as well. Yeah, that was one of the first encounters I had with Neha before even meeting her in person. So I can't wait to hear her doing the delivery herself. But just to give an idea of who Neha is, she's an award-winning global climate justice advocate. She's a poet and she's a contemporary folk artist with a deep belief in the power of the human imagination to create new realities. As a presidential leadership scholar, Neha has co founded a social enterprise called Solar Sister. And Solar Sister basically combines green power with local women power to improve clean energy access in sub Saharan Africa. And after 10 years of passionately nurturing the organization, Neha successfully transitioned in 2020 to renew the batteries of her own body, mind, and spirit. And she is currently growing the garden of her earth stewardship centered multidisciplinary creative studio, which uses the power of poetry and art to foster planetary health through colorful creative reclamations. I mean, I am like, I can't wait, just to hear from Neha. Um, and one other thing about Neha is that she is the inaugural global ambassador for nonprofit Remote Energy, whose flagship program for women is making the solar installation sector more for women of color in both America and around the world. Hopefully it's not on mute. If you could please mute. Okay, thank you very much. Um, Neha also serves as a solar suitcase ambassador for nonprofit We Care Solar, which powers midwives and maternal health workers across the world with solar innovation. And in her adopted home in Maryland, the US, Neha serves on the board of the local arts organization Silver Spring Town Center, which educates, entertains, and inspires residents of all ages by cultivating public spaces with arts and cultural events that embrace the region's diversity and build community connections. Neha has been featured in National Geographic magazine and Forbes and Mothers of Invention podcast. Neha, welcome. Welcome to the space. We're so glad that you made time to be with us today. And just to get us started, Neha, could you please read for us Maslow was wrong, and then I'll pose my first question to you.
Yeah, sure. Again, hello, everybody. Um, Starting with poetry to feed all our souls and sprinkling poetry all throughout this conversation to hopefully nourish myself in community with all of you. So this poem is just so close to my heart and being, and you will know at the end of it why. Because as the title says, I so deeply in my bones, bones of my soul and soul of my bones know that Maslow was wrong, which is the title of this poem. Maslow was wrong. Maslow was wrong. He got the geometry all wrong. What Maslow did not know is that life is not a one-way triangle to be climbed bottom to top, first body, then mind, then soul. No, no, no. He was wrong. Life is not a triangle, not like that. Life is a web of circles, as ancestors of my ancestors knew to be true before science had a name for itself. Maslow was wrong. And much of what is wrong with our world is in our misplaced geometry. Maslow's unilateral triangular ladder competing with each other, within us, outside us, all around us, as life's circular web dreams of wholeness, as ancestors of my ancestors knew to be true before science had a name for itself, waiting for you and I to step out of triangles, fighting themselves. Maslow was wrong. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neha. Oh, what a perspective shifter. Yeah, and in stepping out of our triangles, you know, on your Instagram account, you describe yourself as a migratory artist, a poet, and a climate justice advocate. Can you tell us, you know, more about these descriptors and how they come together in, you know, in the Neha Misra studios?
Yeah, so one, I would also share with everybody my name, Neha itself has roots in Sanskrit, which is the ancient language of my ancestors. And my nani, my grandmother, was actually a scholar in Sanskrit, and she fought to learn it. And it means love. So this is all a sharing of love with all of you. And that descriptor, Joanne, I would answer in its wholeness, because I feel much of my global development life, which has been whole of my adult life, from India to North America, to my work across Uganda, Tanzania, Nigeria, whole of my global development life, I feel in many ways has been a disembodied existence, where I feel I am all three of those. I am a poet, I'm a visual artist, and I'm a climate advocate. But there are spaces where I would show up as, okay, I'm only the artist in these circles, only the poet in these circles, and only the climate advocate or social entrepreneur or woman rights advocate, what label the reductionist system wishes to put on me, and yeah, there were glimpses of intersections where I could be more than one of those things at a time, but it was not a sense of wholeness. And I feel the disembodiment was not just imposed by systems, I also internalized it. And there was a season of life in which that compartmentalization was perhaps a recipe of self-preservation for me. But uh, I am in a season of life where that compartmentalization was deeply hurting me in body, mind, and spirit. So my studio really came out of that craving both within me, but not only in my private existential crisis, solitude, and wholesomeness, but also realizing that wholeness is also craved by our planet and all of us who are fractals making the planet. And that's what my studio is about, being a bridge of this, bifurcations, which I think are just so binary, that you're either left brain or right brain, either head or heart of, or or hand. What about the kidney? What about the liver? What about the rest of the body? So my studio is really about embodying wholeness for private and collective liberation.
My
Oh,
heart,
that's Jennifer, go ahead.
my heart sings about releasing those binaries that bind us. Isn't it funny how bind and binary have the first same 3 letters? My poet brain is very present today. So thank you for that invitation, Neha. And I was hoping that you could read But Why as well next for us.
Here. So this next poem is called But Why. We are cruel to our planet. We are cruel to our planet because we are cruel to each other. We are cruel to each other because we are cruel to ourselves. We are cruel to ourselves because we hunger for love. And hunger is dangerous. And hunger is dangerous when not understood, nor fed, nor heard.
Yes, yes. This poem makes me think about our collective need for each other in such a deep way. And I find myself, like when I start to read about climate, I am like plunged into my own hopelessness, which is something I learned early that I'm always unlearning, right? But when I talk to you, I get the other side, which is the power of imagination in how we use this moment to also create brand new realities. And that is so important. Um, Especially I think when things look dire, we have to understand there's a media culture that sells that as well, because the reality is there's humans and we're connected and we're thinking together all the time. So given all of that, why is reclaiming your power to create and heal so important to you right now?
Yeah, I think for it's that continued thread, I would say, of the private and collective reclamation and healing and creation, because I've spent whole of my life since I got my very first job in Delhi, in the environmental justice, energy access movement, climate justice movement. It has had different names to of the tide, but it is one ocean, you know. And I feel the environmental movement is it is so much about othering, because I used to say for the longest time, as my younger self, that I'm a pendulum. I studied physics. I'm a pendulum. I move between either saving myself or saving the world. First of all, saving. Who are we really saving, and who can save anybody? So that itself is questionable. But again, this binary of saving myself or saving the world, I feel it was both within me and part of my whole of my environmental movement life, even in very woke spaces, because environment is this other thing, out there separate than us, when the truth is we are of the earth. Earth is in us and we are in it. So, and as that tiny poem, but why is about that collective consciousness and well-being and private well-being is really deeply tied together. We cannot burn ourselves out while trying to save a burning world. you know and I feel uh, both my lived experience, where I was so burnt out, ironically, while spreading solar power use around the world for climate justice and energy justice in an intersectional way. You cannot keep taking from a solar battery. That is solar 101. You must charge it. You know, otherwise it will die. You know, and likewise, one has to charge oneself. And I see this also in my intimate and broader, global development circles, that I have been burnt out, and many of my friends have been so burnt out, and burnt out people in a burning world. It's not a coincidence, So what gives me hope, and I feel I have been, not just able to contribute to building regenerative economies, but I have been able to regenerate myself again and again when I pay attention, you know, and that's why I feel reclaiming the power to create and heal, which is not like, it's not like I have not been touched by some special fairy dust. I feel that power is innate. We are creative beings as human beings, and as spiritual beings who are having this human experience. And I do feel like, for me, revolution is to reclaim healing and even beauty, which a lot of people have disdain for as a word. I love beauty. I love making beauty, and art is not something that I do. Art is who I am, and I do feel it is if I can heal that fractal and move others in however like micro way, I feel it's also serves planetary healing and reimagining worlds that do not even exist yet, but that are full circles, as we know Maslow was wrong. And there's idea of Indra's web in both Buddhist and Hindu philosophies, which says that actually this world is a web, where each node of the web is a jewel that reflects other nodes. So I feel it's part of that collective web of healing, that uh, that I feel I participate in when I heal myself and create.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that imagery.
Wow, Neha. Can you honor us with another poem? The one called "Whose Center"?
Yeah, so this poem, everybody was born last year during the peak of the lockdown, because I was doing a lot of gardening. I'm a very novice urban gardener. I live in a co-housing community, which is an experiment in collective living on the border of Maryland and DC. And I have these gorgeous planter pots. So this poem was based on true story, So it's called "Whose Center." There was a happy marigold growing on the edge of the pot. In my generosity, overflowing with good intentions, I repotted it in the center of the same pot to bring it from the edges to the center. I repotted the happy marigold from the edge. The happy marigold died, and edgy afterward. Maybe not all beings that thrive on the fringes need to be brought to the center.
Amazing. Wow. I love it. Um, Neha, so you've worked also for so many years in the social good space. What would you want to tell your younger self about what you've learned so far, or even your future self about what you're learning now?
Yeah, so many lessons, but now one of the few lessons I would say is I would share with both. I feel both directions, my younger and older selves, is that to be selfless is not a compliment, and don't take it as a compliment. Because the way I grew up, it was like one of the highest compliment you can give to a human being is, what a selfless human being. Why? Where did the self go? Did it bury itself? Did it die? Did it like become like a speck of a chapati? Or what happened to this, to the self, So I want to remind my younger and older selves to just be so keenly mindful, because some of these messages that are embedded in our subconsciousness. And few years ago, one of my friends who's obsessed with enneagrams made me take enneagram tests, and not surprisingly, I am too the helper. you know so my tendency is self-annihilation. Self-annihilation is revered in my lineage. you know but so just, and I have to be really aware to not self-annihilate. That again, there can be no collective without the self. It's not either or. um, so that's one big lesson. And then I would also I would tell my younger self to not to offer to take notes for others so much, because I take really beautiful, stunning notes. I believe I am one of in my circles, I'm the best note taker. you know? And in a lot of meetings, I would just, without even being asked, I'm like, who will take the notes? I'll take the notes, because I just take such gorgeous, colorful notes. Distilling complex ideas into practical insights. But no, I should not. And especially as a brown woman in a lot of power positions in rooms full of white people, uh, hey, younger Neha, don't offer to take the notes. Just sit back and participate in the meeting and share your voice loud and proud. Yeah.
Yeah, it takes you out of the room because you're having to translate and focus. And it's a very sacred role that gets denigrated and devalued. So, how do we also uplift the note taker? Is one of my questions. As a valuable, important part of the puzzle for the whole, right? Not just an admin function that doesn't matter. Like, cannot, I think about that too. But I echo all of those. Thanks. Um, you mentioned burnout and that being part of your journey, as it is for probably many people in the room, including myself. And you were talking recently about coming back from burnout. What does that mean to you, and how does that look to you? What has that journey taught you?
Yeah, it has really been really spiritual awakening for me in many ways, because I feel I've been, everybody should know I'm a very morbid person, and I have always been one of the most morbid people I know, along with the fabulous note taker self. And- but and I don't say that as a disparaging thing. I have also been keenly alive because of a sense of mortality. And but I feel it's one thing to intellectually ponder on death and revisit the idea of reincarnation, which now I subscribe to in my 40s, just to have options. And but I feel like for me, I had more than one very close brush with mortality on 3 different continents, during my very much all-consuming global development, fiery, self-consuming years, and I feel that life is always speaking to us in foreign languages. It's sometimes like whispering, you don't listen, then it knocks, you don't listen, then it bangs. And then you can still choose to close your eyes and ears, or you can say, oh, what is this language I must hear? What is it? It's trying to speak to me. What it is trying to tell me? What are the new dreams I should dream? Can my dreams change? In a different season of life, what was most exciting was because like all my work is a guise to make friends. I like to make friends, all over the planet. And I have made such amazing, beautiful, meaningful relationships all over the world, I feel. And in a different season of life, what used to be the excitement of constant movement, the foreign language that I paused and understood said that, wait, movement was good. Now it is time for stillness, for having coffee in your own same mug every day. Wow, how beautiful that boring can be. And boring is not beautiful. It's not boring even. It's most magnificent. It's all about perspective, right? And different life stages. Um, so so I feel I had to, it was really hard. Both it was physically, spiritually, mentally hard to realize that something needed to shift, and to park my ego in the parking lot, because I thought, I'm so important. How can this organization, the movement I co-seeded, even with all my mantras, but there was still a sense of I'm so important. So to take back seat, to pass the mic, share the mic, cultivate the garden so mic can be shared, you know, and to give up power, to be aware of power, you know, and and to let, I would also say, to let my me die, I die to my old life. It doesn't mean it has gone to dust, because now I believe in reincarnation, which I feel starts in this life. So that it's been most life-giving, and it was really hard because death is hard. And I've had also then in face of mortality, not just my own, these times last 2 years in the world, because I transitioned just before COVID and not knowing anything. It's just the universe, and I feel mortality, both mine and my family, so many deaths in my family due to COVID in India, family, friends, and larger circles. And so I feel also to ponder on mortality, and that one can come back with attention, attention meeting intention.
I think we so rarely talk about mortality and burnout, but it always really does boil down to, how do you want to spend your time? With whom? Doing what? These are big questions. So in that spirit of taking perspective, Mr. Hassan, can I ask you to mute, please? Thank you. In that spirit, Neha, will you please read efficiency? With a little accompaniment.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so this poem, the backstory, everyone is, I think is part of something akin to the 360 degrees review, that not quite, but something akin to that. Somebody was giving me, somebody had given me a negative feedback, how I'm so relational. like it's a bad thing because it's not so efficient, it's a waste of time to cultivate relations, and we got to be efficient. So this is really what inspired this poem. What's efficient? Fast food is efficient. Fast food is efficient, yet I love the deep love of loves, known and strangers, mothers, grandmothers, in body and or heart, woman of my skin color, patiently grinding spices, brewing hope from seeming thin air, but it's in reality not thin at all. It's the only thing that matters. It's deep, it's intergenerational, it is trauma reborn as taste of the buds, ready to soak, to slow cook, to spread. Slow, 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 deep, deep, deep. For such is true love, slow, deep, inefficient. To love like this. What's efficient? Part 2. Dictatorship is efficient, yet please serve me democracy with all its inefficiencies. Part 3. What's efficient? Silence. End of poem.
I love that. Love is inefficient. And bless for that. In this time that you've had after coming back from burnout, what have you learned in cultivating your creative life about this thing that we care so much about at Healing Solidarity, collective and individual healing? What has your creative life taught you about that?
I feel like for me, this whole period, and this is all like footnoted with my privilege. This period has been about, one, being present, and two, about integrating. And integration, again, it's not very efficient process. Actually, you can't just say, now I'll decide to be whole. It just takes so much compassion to self and presence, and also being mindful of not rushing into the tendencies of fixing things, or let me go and help, because otherwise what is my life if I'm not fixing something? So I feel, one, for me, to be keenly aware of my own tendencies, and to work on not follow them and change, hopefully subconscious, if you're listening. I hope some of your script is changed. And really just to be, and so I'm not like a trained, like as in esoteric train. I don't have a MFA degree, didn't go, but poetry is in my soul, that's how I grew up. I don't need a grammar lesson to breathe and birth poetry, and Oxford comma, I know people have feelings about it. With or without Oxford comma, one can love poetry, So I weaved my poetry manuscript in the last year. and my debut poetry manuscript, which is part of particularly last decades of my last one, last previous decade of my life, my 30s, which itself came about by the catalyst for that was personal loss and grief, because I had gone through just loss in my private life, and I think that's what kind of spurred it, and that I was able to bring about a renaissance then, but now a different kind of renaissance had been calling out to me, um, so really, being present and not listening to anybody who says that you need a degree either to write or enjoy poetry, or or to share it with the world, or even my art. Like I'm a contemporary visual folk artist, and most are welcome to check out my work on my website and Instagram that I only signed up last year for, which is actually related to relationship with visibility and power, because I know I should hide myself because I'm such a private person. Yes, but also part of my hiding was to not let those who should see me, because I want to touch human beings and connect with other human beings, so I'm now available to connect people. But I feel it was also like, even in creating my folk art, it flows from so many diverse Indian, South Asian art forms, and I didn't go to art school, and you don't have to, you know so I feel to not listen to those voices, and as an emerging artist, which is also a poem in making, because who is emerging and from where and when and how, like from the womb or like in the grave, like who gets to claim emerging artist like title, right? But I feel it is to make your own path, like for me to make my own path. Of course it's not easy, it's so hard, even with all my privileges, even with all the amazing human beings in my life, it's hard, but a lot of wonderful, much needed things in the world are hard, and it's not a coincidence, it's not an outlier that things are hard. It is part of the reclamation, that you keep going through the hardness to reach the heart of softness. And that despite the hardness, despite the ugliness of the world, I will show up with my flower. I will show up with my colors, So it is just to listen to that language of what you in relationship with universe want to participate in.
Oh, I love that. And as you were talking, Neha, I was even just thinking that this idea of reclaiming our power and our creativity, it should not even be something that we label as radical. This is how we should be living. This is how it's meant to be, um, living our truths. And you know, you've written also a poem called To Live Your Truth. Can you just continue watering that seed that you've just, planted by reading
Yeah.
for us?
Yeah, most definitely. And you will see, everyone, how this is also flowing from my gorgeous novice garden now, shining, but also as a metaphor for what to me, like speaking for myself, what I am and what my experience has been. So it's called To Living Your Truth. If you have been a gardener all your life, if you have been a gardener all your life and now wish to bloom as a flower, be a flower. If you have been a flower all your life and now wish to groom as a gardener, be a gardener. If you wish to be both a flower and a gardener, be both. Do not listen to those who being neither deter your growing too. Live your truth. Yeah, so I feel I have been in my selflessness being a gardener, you know, uh, and also even almost to overcompensate because I don't have children, and wow, like the messages, the social messages, both quite active messages from acid aunties. There's a comic strip called Acid Aunties. I believe it's from India, but from the social norms. I feel I've been overcompensating by almost wanting to prove my worth. You know, and I feel to know that I am innately worthy. You know, and and that I love being a gardener, both of my tiny garden, but also human relationships and movements, in service of justice and healing. But I also love being a flower, and that there is a choice. I can practice boundaries for when I want to be either, and again, when I wish to not be in that binary, I can be both, you know.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Yeah, it evokes a lot of also things that are happening in the development sector, especially as we shift more towards, embracing sort of the universality of the change, of the transformation that we want to see. And as communicators in the global development sector, how can we infuse more creativity in our work, in a way that speaks to our universal human experience?
Hmm. I would say, in my experience, I feel everything is spiritual work to me. Again, it's not something that I do when I go to like a space with the label sacred space. Yes, sacred spaces are beautiful and sacred, and I love them, but I feel life itself is sacred. So, so I feel transcending the binaries and reductionism that I have internalized myself, and that kind of fragmented being for me. Again, I feel it's all about living your truth. So I cannot speak to what anyone should do. But for me, what has been really important is to keep reminding myself that I can be whole of that, and that's what makes me my whole magnificent self, that I can be in a global development meeting, with with mostly white bodied humans in many cases being the only woman of color there, and that in very efficient, loving human spaces, I can actually show up with my very unabashed colors, my flower, and we're going to share a poem today, you know, because what is any work without soul, you know? What is any work without soul? So it's not a service when we park our souls outside. Yes, we need to get things done, but you can't get things done without your soul actively participating in the process, you know. So I would just say, like, I would just invite an invitation to yourselves, as it calls, And if it calls even, what does embodying wholeness mean mean to you? And truly, I feel this again label of artist. I feel that certain people are artists. The truth is, we all need to be artists and claim that. So whether it's yeah, just even just writing a press release, or doing a training program where we are inhabiting presence with other human beings on Zoom, or in future in physical spaces, or something which is viscerally creative, through photography or writing poetry, or essay, even if it's just for one's own self. But if one feels called to share it and with humans, that feels right, I feel, to embody that, and to do the groundwork, the preparatory work, to prepare the soil of inhabiting the soul in a world which is constantly gnawing at us to park the soul outside. And whatever that looks for, I feel each one of us, whatever creative expression speaks to us, like Jen here makes most glorious collages. So it's collage, and or poetry, and using that as a tool of reflection in oneself or in the collective. I just feel people light up when one brings creativity in, you know. So I would just say, and also challenge, the systems that are devoid of soul. And of course, I realize as a person of color how hard it is to challenge those systems and how abrasive it can be. So that's why also, when one chooses to challenge them, and when one chooses to step back, if one can, you know
Mm.
yeah.
Well, you have brought a tremendous amount of joy and presence and wisdom to us today. Thank you, Neha. I'm in recognition of the confines of commodified time. I do want to note that it's almost 11. So I'm going to take a pause just to promote a couple of events that are upcoming. A few months ago, we had Moki Makura from Africa No Filter. She's hosting a webinar on July 29th. It's going to be amazing, entitled How to Write About Africa. Please, you can register in the link there. And then, of course, our next session of this wonderful meeting will be on the 11th of August. So just go ahead and mark your calendars now. We hope you join us. And now I'm going to turn over to Joan, and we're going to open up some questions and stay on the line a bit longer with Neha. Thanks all for being here if you have to leave.
Absolutely. We haven't finished our session yet. And this is the part that we invite you to share with us, what are some of the connections, the key lessons, the themes that, are kind of coming into mind, as Neha, shares so generously from her heart. Feel free to unmute and, let us know, or if you would like to send it also as a message, in the chat, please go ahead and do that. But it's such a rich conversation, and maybe I can just start by saying that, when you talked about sort of living in our truths, and that not being something that we should just park outside, when we go to certain places, that's a revelation that I had recently. And I was like, wow, living the awakened life is actually, it can actually be difficult when you haven't, done the proper groundwork, because I was like, I can't just, dedicate it only to one part of my life. And then the other part, I'm like, I'm not going to do that, because, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel wholesome. So I really resonated with that comment. Yeah. Let's have a look in the chat if we have. Let's see.
So feel free to share your questions or thoughts in the chat, or just unmute and feel free to weigh in.
Yeah.
Hi everyone. I just unmuted. I was listening to Miha, and two things touched me very deeply. One was when she spoke about moving from the fringes to the center. It sort of, I connected with this in the understanding that everything shouldn't be in the center. It's in how we create cities, in how we create ideas. You know, some should remain at the fringes. That kind of touched me. And on the journey from moving through a burnout, I've been caregiving my wife who's been in a burnout for a long duration of time. And those words kind of struck very deeply. It's that you stop, you know, and then you have to start again. So it's like you die and then, you know, you have to live again. And these are the exact words that, that my wife has used. And listening to them, listening to other people say it, walking through cities where I see people burning themselves out, it sticks that like, wow, it's not just a conversation. It is true. You have a limited amount of energy. It's not infinite, and you have to choose how and where you use it. I'm happy to hear you say this. I hear it a lot. I'm happy to hear it from someone else. Thank you, Nika.
Wow. Thank you so much, Sherry, for opening up and telling and sharing that with us. I want to leave that also open. Neha, I want to invite you as well, you know, if you would like to jump in also and give input on some of the feedback coming in, please go ahead.
Sure, yeah, and I also want to thank you, Sheriff, and also I believe my parents are here on the call. Hi, Mommy, Papa. So, welcome. Yeah, I feel you know what you're saying. I'm so glad it resonates, Sheriff. And you know, I learned, like I was saying, I'm a novice gardener. I grew up in a very urban metropolitan Delhi, so I feel I've not had that like a deep connection with land and growing, you know, which I'm trying to reclaim also now in my very tiny urban garden. But like my friends who are who grew up with agriculture, you know, they say how important it is to leave the land, to not just keep taking from the land, you know, and that the word Sabbath itself has roots in agriculture, you know. And I feel again it's about that connection, that we can't just keep extracting from ourselves. And whether it's our own private messages or social messages that keep tying our worth to be constantly all consuming, working, giving. I feel that that actually is in a paradoxical way hurts what we deeply care about, which is about healing. You know, so yeah, I hope more of us can also feel not alone, because you know it can feel very alone, the burnout process, you know. And then we are not alone, and that's why I feel sharing about these experiences, both how these systems in global development but also beyond, because it's a reflection of the world. And I think Fiona said, you know, about fractals. You know, I mentioned about fractals, and I feel that's what we are. Um, I almost envision if the planet is made of one, you know, massive combination of Legos. We are each part of the Lego, you know, and if we take those individual Legos out, the whole planet would be wobbly as it is right now. And I feel that's why being a fractal part of the whole means that we owe it both to ourselves and the planet and the universe, you know, to take care of our physical, mental, spiritual being. You know, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much, Neha, as well for that. A couple of more comments, you know, just cheering you on and generously sharing with us in the chat as well. Anna Martine says this is the third time in a week that she's been invited into rejecting and replacing binaries. Wow. Then, yeah, the universe is obviously speaking very loud and clear about that. Yeah, and it's good that you're listening as well to that message that is being passed on to you. Yeah, so if anybody else would like to share anything, Manusha, would you like to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, this is my first time here. So I just got really emotional a little bit. Sorry, when Neha said,
It's all welcome here, Manusha. Take all the time you need.
when Neha mentioned that we can choose whether to be a flower or the gardener or the both, it really got me because I have been having very rough couple of years, I guess. I really love working in international development field, but then I burned out massively. The best part was actually I got a scholarship at the same time, scholarship. So I moved to the UK, lived in Brighton, and that was the beginning of my healing. And I have to come back to Sri Lanka. So it's been challenging. I have been here since the beginning of COVID, but the transition and everything is questioning me to whether to go back to the hamster life I had before, or slow down and heal and take a different path. So I have actually decided to go towards the healing path. And Neha could relate, like, grow up in a South Asian household, although you get some support from parents, societal pressures and things, sometimes overwhelming. So I'm really glad to find this space. Yeah. So thank you.
Oh, Manusha.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Manusha. Yeah, I just want to say I see you and I feel you and I see you. And also, if you'd like to connect beyond Manusha, more than happy to, yeah, have a one-on-one connection. Yeah, I feel, yeah, the isolation of a lot of these journeys by oneself, you know. And I feel also the systems that tell us that we have to put a brave face all the time, you know. So I feel if more of us can share, you know, that we can be incredible, amazing human beings and leaders and co-leaders and gardeners, and we can be harmed by these systems that are obsessed with efficiency and constantly extracting from us, you know, and that we can renew ourselves before there can be any renewable energy in the world, which is my field. We must renew ourselves in service of renewable energy. We are part of renewable energy sector, each one of us, you know. So, yeah, thank you for sharing and for being here.
Yeah. Thank you for that heartful, open, vulnerable sharing, Manusha. And I'm so glad you're part of the Healing Solidarity Collective, because we are all on the journey together. And that is why we're creating these spaces, so that we don't have to be alone or feel like we're the only ones. We can be seen and held and free all at once here. And it rocks our world. It makes us change decision, how we make decisions. It disrupts us, and we still choose it. Because the joy that I want to share with you is that on the other side of this is more connection, more possibility than we can imagine right now. That's why we keep walking through the thresholds. It's why we keep listening to the invitation and saying yes. So whatever decisions you're making right now are powerful, and they can always change. I'm in the throes of a big decision myself right now, and I keep a little footnote that says I reserve the right to change my mind, because this is hard, and I'm not sure about everything or anything right now. So let's be confused together. Let's be a mess together. Let's not have it all figured out. Let's not be professional all day long. Let's be human. Let's be human. And so that, and our own experiences. Goodbye said something really important, about being yourself and no imitation. And I also think of no performance. So much of our global development sector is about the performance of goodness. Well, guess what? I'm good and bad. I'm happy and I'm sad. I am all whole, everything, as Neha's time with us today has really portrayed. And I'm just so grateful for all of you for staying with it and sticking with it and being in the mess together. I'm really grateful to all of you. Any other burning questions? We should wrap up probably, but we want to be able, everyone is welcome to say or share.
Actually, I have a question, Neha. This is something that I was thinking a lot about when we talk about climate justice, and when we look at the youth in the global South. I'm just curious what your thoughts are. Is climate justice, sort of something that is serving the youth in the global South, or is it reaching them, or is it not reaching them? I'm just curious about your thoughts on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's such a great question, Joanne. I would say not just youth in the South, I would even say um, as a woman of color who has sat in boardrooms, served on boards, been in the hierarchy of things, at the pinnacle of leadership positions in organization, both as a woman, as a South Asian woman, and a woman who doesn't fit the dominant identity, or the romanticization of women as mothers. But somebody who I've nurtured like so many relationships and movements, not because of imposition, but because that's what I love doing in the world. But that I have been a minority in the dominant systems in more than one way, and not, I feel also in a lot of, I would even say, in white liberal woman circles, where a lot of the symptoms of these systems exist, within our I feel the climate justice movement is not devoid and of a lot of the challenges, and has so much deep work to do in America and where I am right now, and globally. So I feel not just, yes, particularly for youth, but also people and leaders in intergenerational spectrums, that come from the so-called label of developing world, and I feel it is not serving us yet, because also who's seen, who gets heard, right? Like like whose voice is put on a pedestal, and and whose voice is like on the fringe, So I feel that's why I feel intergenerational leadership by people of all color, but particularly leaders of color globally, and an awareness of power. And I say that as somebody who comes from power sector, but that it took me like only in recent years I've been more deeply aware of power in me, around me, and I've had language for it thanks to Perennial Fellowship, which is an incredible program that for the first time only in 2019 I got the language around it. This was like in my late 30s, imagine. And I feel if more of us can share these intergenerational lessons, both in these boundaries, in caring for self, its connection to the planet, but also the knowledge around power. Who has it? Who gets to claim it? How do we share it? I feel it's needed. It's nowhere where it should be, the climate justice movement, and I feel that's why this wholeness and reclamation of colors, not just in a painting, which for me, I love colors in my paintings and my clothes, but also people of color leading, not as a side note, not as a decoration on the cake that, hey, we had a DEI committee and now look, we have 2 Black, brown, Asian board members. No, in a deeply fundamental way, I feel these systems continue to be transformed, Yeah.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you so much for that. Yeah.
Thank you.
What a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Neha, again, from the bottom of our hearts. Thanks to all of you for being with us. We will meet and convene again on August 11th. We hope to see you again, and good luck, and know that we're here. You can contact us anytime.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Please.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. My heart is full, Neha. Thank you so much. Yeah.
And feel free to connect with more people and resources at any time at the Healing Solidarity Collective. We're glad to have you.